You carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friends Jeff MD and Randy Nance. They're currently backstage, but I'll be bringing them on stage here shortly. We're going to be discussing pyro-terrorism this evening, which is not something new. It's something that ISIS and al-Qaeda in particular have been plotting for many, many years. And I debated whether or not I was going to do a podcast on it tonight. One of the reasons I did it is because I didn't want to have the long war series staggered. So in other words, we've got 12 arcs. Think of it as a TV season with 12 episodes each. We're getting ready to start the next arc. So I didn't want to start 2 this week, and then 2 weeks from now end up with 2 and then having a stagger. So tonight we're discussing pyro-terrorism. And then tomorrow night, we're going to be discussing Venezuela. Khalid's been having power issues. I like to say that we're a first world country with a third world power grid, but he lives in a third world country with a third world power grid. So it hasn't been particularly cooperative for him recently. Anyway, before we get started with the conflicted question and the main topic of the night, well, we have a sit rep as well. I think we've got 5 different news items to discuss. The company that introduced me to Noble Gold, and there's a reason I'm mentioning this, is that I had no idea some of the things that some of these gold companies could do. My opinion was not very high of gold companies, and I'm not really going to talk about it tonight, to be honest with you. But what I will tell you is the company that introduced me to Noble Gold introduced me to another company called Vizsla, V-I-Z-L-A, which is really interesting. So while I've been in high tech for many, many years, I've always had some element, some connection to commercial and residential construction. And y'all probably have heard countless stories of copper being stolen from job sites. I mean, I've heard stories of copper wire being pulled out of the studs and being, cashed in because copper's value's gone up so dramatically. Of course, a lot of plumbing we have these days is, synthetic ABS, PVC, whatever the case may be. But there's been a real run on copper, and most people aren't aware of this. We're now on the verge of a pretty significant copper shortage. Everything that we have that's electronic, everything that has power to it has to have copper. So even when you look at the motherboard inside your phone, for example, or your computer, there's these little tiny strands of copper. They're the size of your hair. They're called ICs, interconnects. If we don't have copper, we don't have any of that stuff, number one. Number two, we've got countries like China trying to lord over us various types of, natural resources, rare earth minerals, those sort of things. So here's the interesting part. This company who introduced me to Vizsla, and I'm interested in them because they're fixing to go public with a new project. They found a silver vein somewhere in Alaska or whatever a few years ago, and it turned into like $1 billion. These guys, it's not a good pun, but they've got the Midas touch. Everything they touch turns to silver, though, not gold. Anyway, they've got some copper projects that are off the chain. So if you're around my age, I'm 56, and you're thinking at some point in time you would like to retire or semi-retire, I know I would, then I think you might be interested in these guys. So let me just give you a few highlights on this company called Vizsla Copper, and I'll share some graphics with you, and then we'll get right into things here. But basically, at the end of the day, the supply chain for copper it's in dire straits. And again, whether it's our power grid, your communications tools, it's electrical systems in your home, your office, everywhere. And nobody seems to be paying attention. I know the media sure hasn't been paying attention, but the federal government's actually made some emergency moves to secure the domestic supply, rightfully so, because of other countries lording this stuff over top of you. So when the government backs something, I mean, and I'm not saying the government's efficient by any stretch of the imagination, but if the government says we back this particular project, this particular endeavor, that's pretty much a home run when it comes to cashing in on stuff. So if you're not aware of this, the White House just issued immediate measures to increase American mineral production, specifically named in the Palmer Project in Alaska as a priority. And what that essentially means, fast track, means we're not going to have anything delayed by EPA, all that kind of baloney. There's estimated to be $3.5 billion of copper, zinc, and other metals already, defined, accessible by roads that have been built, direct path to ports. So essentially what's happened is the government is pointing at this one particular project and saying, this one needs to be accelerated. It's important for national defense. It's important for a whole host of reasons. So Vizsla Copper just acquired this Palmer, I don't know what you would call it, like I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm thinking vein in my head, but it's probably, there's probably a more eloquent term for it. So the team that built Vizsla Silver up to billions, that's the same team behind this copper thing. So they've already got control over, this is pretty crazy, 1.7 billion pounds of copper. And now they're positioned to just take that to a whole new level inside of America, no less, with the exception that some of their projects are in British Columbia between Alaska and, lower 48. But at the end of the day, I think that for me, the thing that relates back to the noble gold, tangible, something physical. It's not a fiat dollar. It's not a CBDC, like central bank digital currency crap or anything like that. I like tangible stuff myself. So you can invest in Vizsla copper right now, and I'll give you all the stock symbols and all that stuff. It's VCUFF in the United States and VCU.V in Canada. And I believe it's already trading. Don't quote me on that, because again, I just had this brought to my attention not too long ago. So I'll really briefly here go through some stuff, but this particular thing I found says copper's fixing to go upwards of $20 a pound, which is unbelievable. Can you imagine if we were still using copper pipes in homes, how much it would cost just to plumb your home? But this one here, this is the White House thing on Trump reviving this particular project. And I don't know why the old Biden admin shut it down. Probably some bullshit climate warming crap or something along those lines. But anyway, this is it being accelerated. So again, this has got, I don't even know all of those codes. You guys probably do. CUZN, I guess, is zinc, AGAU. I'm not a chemist. I'm a college dropout for that matter, but I do have a nose for making money. And this looks like a pretty good opportunity. But this one here is really focused on copper with some extra stuff that goes along with it. But check this out. Those are 5 projects that they have all kind of in the same vicinity. And now the Canadian government is backing these guys as well, promoting them, saying that's really important. So anyway, if you want to get in on something on the ground floor, Vizsla Copper, check the notes in the video description below, and you'll have all the information right there. So with that being said, let me bring my compadres online here. So my good friend Randy Nance, combat wounded Green Beret back home in Texas. And below us, our in-house 007 Jeff MD, author extraordinaire. Good to see y'all.
Who's from a copper mining town, by the way.
No shit.
Yeah, Miami, Arizona. My father-in-law was an underground copper miner for 40 years.
I did not know that. So just now that we're on this topic, I mean, how big of a deal was it in that town when you grew up? Was it like
it was everything? Still is.
What I thought.
And the town that my wife grew up in, it was the second deepest underground copper mine in the world. And yeah, that whole town was built by Magna Copper. It was a company town. All the houses, they built everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But Arizona, there's trying to open 3 new copper mines here, but the damn greens are such a pain in the ass. the environmental terrorists.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, so just since you raised the topic and you're an engineer, I mean, what happens if we don't have access to copper and these other minerals? I mean, I think it's pretty easy prediction.
Yeah, there's nothing, basically electronics stop, because the only thing that is more efficient than copper at transmitting electricity is silver, which is even more expensive than copper. They've used aluminum in some high tension power lines, but it's not efficient. They get hot. There's a lot of loss. Copper is your best bet.
Very interesting. I didn't know that. Learn something new every day.
Yep.
What I do know is that we need it, basically.
Yeah, and the second best conductor, well, it's the second best electrical conductor behind silver, and it's the second best thermal conductor behind gold. So those aren't, it's not like you can replace it with silver and gold. So
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's funny. I was just thinking, since we're talking Alaska, before we dive into the conflicted question, for those of you wondering where I've been the first half of this week, I've been in Nashville shooting and planning a new late night TV show, and I'll share more information on it another time. But if y'all know the online personality, the J6er, who's called Baked Alaska, he sat beside me through the entire planning session, and there were some other pretty high profile, call it conservative personalities there. It was a really interesting session. Like I say, I'll share more with y'all later on, but let's get into the conflicted question here. For those of you not familiar with this, conflictedthegame.com, these are 14 card decks, all set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. 99% of the questions have some element of morality to them, hence the name conflicted. So I'm going to read this question. The three of us are going to give you our answers at the end of the podcast, but we want to hear your answers. You throw it in the live chat, throw it in the comment section down below. Either is fine. So Gordon is a natural leader and finds himself in jeopardy frequently. This personal sacrifice keeps the group safe, but it also puts his family in harm's way. Should a great leader assume all of the risk, or can heroism be taught? That's an interesting question. I don't know what y'all think of that, but very interesting. I kind of think a lot of that's hard baked into your DNA, but
yeah, the short answer is no.
Spoken like it. Let me guess. When you went to selection, 1 or 10 or 100 people flunked out.
Well, we started with like 200 and maybe 20 or 30, and we finished with 65.
Wow. Well,
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So, got it. All right. So, first one up here. For those in the United States and European law enforcement intelligence, while encrypted channels are still the primary method for radicalization, a new method has become very common to avoid detection. Previously, radicalized indoctrinated operatives who own cell/mobile and computer shops are now keeping secure drawers full of USB drives loaded with videos and publications that are handed over based on a code word only known to those who have been recently brought into the ISIS fold. That individual then becomes a handler for the newly radicalized, indoctrinated. The network of evil is spreading in this manner across Europe and the United States. Now, here's where this gets interesting to me, at least. And I'll come to you first, Jeff. But this is a dead drop. I mean, this is what Mike Glover started, essentially dead drop intel, where, you know what? I mean, you come from the spy world. Explain what a dead drop is.
A dead drop is a location that is predetermined between the case officer and the agent, to where you can leave materials and instructions for them, and they can leave stuff for you. It might be he gives you intel product, inside information, whatever, and you may give him instructions and money. Usually a dead drop will come with two signals, a load signal and an unload signal, which are far away from it, a mile away. So the guy maybe he walks to work, he looks over, he sees a chalk mark on a mailbox. That's the load signal. That means he goes and he retrieves what's in the dead drop. then maybe he puts intel in there, and then he makes a chalk mark on a lamppost a mile away, and that's the loaded, that's his. There may be an unload signal, which means I got it, and then he does a load signal, which means I've loaded it and you've got to get it. So there's all these things you got to go back and forth on. But this method of using the thumb drives is an updated version of what the Iranians did prior to the fall of the Shah, the Ayatollah people, except they used cassette tapes. And you would park on the street, you'd leave your window rolled down an inch, and someone would walk by and just drop a cassette into your car. And it would be speeches from the Ayatollah and things like that. Maybe, there's going to be a protest, and this would tell you when and where the protest is going to be, that kind of thing. But it didn't require two people to be in the same place at the same time.
Every time I hear, dead drop and the way you explain as well, I always think Jerry, that Mel Gibson played in the late 1990s movie Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that always comes to mind for me.
Dead drops are one of the oldest forms of agent communications known to man.
It's got to be hard to catch them too.
I've got it in one of my books where they catch a guy doing it, but they knew he was bad and they followed him until he did it. But they busted alder chains that way, and thing is, you wait till they service a dead drop, and then you watch them lay it down, and then you go in there and get it, and you've got the classified that they're passing to the bad guys, or that kind of thing, or you wait for it. You sit there and watch it and wait for the Russian or the Chinese, whoever's going to service it, wait for them to come in, and then you wrap them both up.
It's really interesting. Randy, I don't know if you want to comment on this or move along to the next one, but I just have one quick question for you. Do you have any thoughts on what the average person can do as far as watching these shops, paying attention to what's going on, some situational awareness, and potentially, seeing something shady going down that they can report? Or do you think they're more clandestine than that?
Well, I would suspect, I'm just going to speculate here because I don't know. But what I will say, if we look around, right, is anybody paying attention in public? No. Right. Everybody's on their phone. Heck, they can't even walk across the street without almost getting hit by a car because they won't stop looking out of their phone. So I'm just going to guess and say probably if people paid attention, they would see something. It would make it a little harder for these guys, but I bet it's probably not that hard right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Well, but even if they see it, okay, you're in a store that sells electronics, and the guy behind the counter hands the customer a thumb drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, this is the operating system update. This is a new video game. You got to give it a shot, or it could be anything, or it could just be I need a thumb drive. Okay, here, $5.
Or he could just go in and buy something and he slip it in the package.
Yeah, he drop it in the package. It looks like a promotional item.
Yeah.
We dropped these in. It's got our store logo on it or some crap like that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It just seems like a low-tech way that it'd be really hard to catch people on.
Yep.
But moving on to the next one here. By the way, this is a Command 11/SDN sit rep. So we've got a bunch of stuff from Khalid here. Many people are talking about how a Hamas plot in Germany was derailed due to intelligence from Mossad. This is a reminder that it was the 1st of October when we explained the threat to the Jewish community in Europe from Hamas and ISIS, who had both issued targeting orders for their fighters. Europe is a powder keg, fully infiltrated by the Muslim Brotherhood in the government, Hamas operatives, both illegals and domestically radicalized, and active ISIS cells that are growing via online radicalization. Until governments take real action against online radicalization, there is no chance to stem the tide of extremist behavior. So I'm going to come to you first just because you're center stage, Jeff. Why does Mossad always try to claim credit for everything other people do? Or listen, if you don't want to commit suicide by shooting yourself 3 times in the back of the head, you don't have to.
No. I'm not worried about Mossad. There are a lot of people, a lot of organizations do that, be it Mossad, the FBI, because it builds the mystique that they are everywhere and know everything, which they are not.
Yeah.
But it scares the crap out of the bad guys. And if they waste resources increasing their security for a non-existent threat, that's good for you. There's ego involved. They want to say, yes, look at us, look how great we are. And they can go back to their own government and say, increase our budget.
Very interesting. Just out of curiosity, when 9/11 2.0 attacks come out, what do you think the odds are of Mossad saying, yeah, we knew this?
Yeah, they'll be like the FBI. They were on our radar.
There you go.
Of course they were.
They'll be on our
They
radar.
were an Arab, therefore they were on our radar. Well, all Arabs then should be on your radar. But they'll either do that or they'll say, yeah, we told you so. We tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen.
Right.
Because remember we said, be careful, a thing was going to happen and you didn't respond. Yeah, because you didn't give us any details. But still, we warned you.
Yeah, right. I want to say thank you to 15-minute City Prepared, $20. That was very nice of you. Thank you. We really appreciate your support. So, Randy, same news topic here. Thoughts on Mossad in general? I honestly, I think that they play two ends towards the middle all the time. I don't really trust anything that is attached to Mossad. And no, I don't want to commit suicide by shooting myself 3 times in the back of the head either. But, take a swing at that.
Well, to me, it just goes pretty much for any intelligence agency. I don't care what country or what affiliate, they all do the same thing. And it's what I said, when certainly by the time I got to group, but, I always thought to myself, we're not, and it's not a popular answer, but when we were in Iraq, I'm like, man, if we were going to do this the right way, we would pick one side and it would probably be the Sunni, right? Because it couldn't be the Shia with Iran. And we would eliminate the other side. We would stop playing both sides all the way around constantly, every day, every hour, and expecting things to change. But it's just not the way it goes. And like I said, to me, that just seems that's just the way it is in the intelligence world. It's the same thing at Green Beret. One of our mottos is through, with, and by, right? Through them, with them, and beside them, basically, right? By them or by them, they're going to do it. But
Gotcha.
we kind of helped them along to get there and then pushed them out the door.
I could roll with that, but I'm not going to. So, all right, next one up here. This is an interesting one from Cleed. By the way, I suspect they have another power outage going on tonight, so he may or may not be able to join us, but things have been a little tenuous over there for his situation in general. He shared some information with y'all last night, and he's not in a good place from a security perspective, and there's a whole lot of bad stuff going on, and then you have these power outages on top of it. So here's from Khalid. This doesn't bother us. India has taught the Taliban, when you can't win on the battlefield, pretend you're stronger on film to raise the morale of your supporters. It's called the Bollywood method. Pretend to be jingoistic and superior when you actually are useless on every level of warfare. And so he shared this post. The Afghan Taliban media have begun hiring actors to insult and racially abuse Pakistanis. In this video, they're acting like the Pakistani negotiation team, which was sent to discuss the ceasefire. So I know you're center stage, Randy, but I got to come to Jeff on this one first because this is directly in his wheelhouse. That's a rather interesting manipulation. I wouldn't call it a psyop, but it has some psychological aspect to it.
It's propaganda. I mean, it's right up there with Baghdad Bob saying the Americans will never get into Baghdad, as in the distance in the background an M1 tank goes rolling down the street. You put on a brave face, but they have an advantage that we don't. They're talking to a population that does not have regular access to outside news.
Right.
So those, this is sort of like North Korea in the old Soviet days. You only got what the government told you, and therefore you assumed it was true. And if it's on TV, it's got to be true.
Well, of course.
This is a very, again, this is for domestic consumption, not international consumption, I suspect. And it's just trying to convince the people who might oust you and hang you in the public square that you're actually doing a good job.
I appreciate that, Jeff. So Randy, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't the Green Berets one of the few or the only, special forces guys who actually engage in psyops, or am I out in left field?
Generally, yes. Because again, and then when you say special forces, that is only the Green Berets. Everybody else is special operations, right? That's why there's a tab that says special forces. Gotcha. And it's not a big, it's the media does it all the time. They say special forces all the time, and it could be the Rangers, it could be CAG, it could be anybody, it could be SEAL Team 6, but they're special operations, and anybody that falls under SOCOM are all special operations, including special forces. But we do have the tab, and yes, they're, like I mentioned before, they're the only soldier on the planet. No other military has one. Ours is the only one that Green Berets are trained in the entire 360-degree bubble of peace, war, all that. And that includes psyops, because we do have psyops around a lot, but they're not always there. And you have to do the same thing. What do you think we're doing when we go meet with a chief, right? It's the same thing, because we have to convince them that we're there for their betterment, and that we're going to help them do what they want to do. Although really we're going to make sure that it aligns with the wants and needs and the interest of the United States federal government.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but it just makes me feel good to know that we've got guys like you, Mike Glover, and other Green Berets doing this stuff. You don't hear a lot about this particular aspect. No,
and then you don't really see, not a lot of Green Berets have wrote books. There's been a few. SEALs are the ones that are famous for doing that. They write a lot of books. They're in a lot of movies, but of course they're also, some of them are out in San Diego, right there by Hollywood. So it just makes sense that cross-pollination would happen over time. And you don't get that. But I will tell you, I've served with some of the best guys you would ever want to know or meet. A lot of Mike Glovers out there. There's a lot of dudes that are like, will just impress the shit out of you.
You know what impresses me, and I've mentioned this briefly before, but I'll tell it really impressed me, is when I was first introduced to Rob O'Neill, and he was telling me how they were called into, DC just days before they went after bin Laden. And I said, well, how much time did y'all get to train together? He said, none. We didn't train together. I said, 24 of you guys went in there, most of which you'd never met or trained with before. He said, yes. I said, how'd that work? He said, we've got things so ingrained that as long as somebody's functioning at the same level as us, doesn't matter whether we know them or not, because we know what everybody's going to do. I was impressed when I heard that, Randy. That's pretty crazy stuff. Because you think when you hear stuff like this that you got to prepare for it, like a football practice, you got to have everybody on the same page, and it wasn't like that at all, according to Rob.
Well, it's a proven fact that you should, right? And we do that as much as possible. I don't know what SEAL Team 6 does. I can't speak on that kind of thing, but I will say that, the SEALs don't have the best reputation for that. I don't want to degrade them or anything, but the reality is they're not great at planning. And second, they think they are the sequential cowboy, right? They don't need alcohol to be 10 foot tall and bulletproof. They just think if they carry more guns and ammo, everything's going to work out fine. Which sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
I'm a big fan of, or here we go with Dano again, by the way. We're starting off with varmint rounds here, 223. Thanks.
That's right.
Appreciate your support very much. Oh, he kills me. I'm wait until he comes up with 458 SOCOM and goes from there. But anyway. All right, next story up. I'll get that out of the way so we can see it here. Apologies. There we go. All right, so next one up. During Jolani's visit to Washington, graffiti from ISIS appeared across the Syrian city of Hama. The Islamic State is on its way to slaughter you, dogs of normalization. Dogs of normalization. That's a term I've never heard of before. Jeff, I'm going to go to you first on it. What exactly does that mean? You're on mute, I think.
You know, I've never heard that one before either. But you know, maybe that'll add it to the Oxford English Dictionary in a year or two, like they do with all these other catchy, trendy words that kids come up with these days. No, I've never heard that one.
So, just overall opinion. So, Jelani was, call it an executive in al-Qaeda. Then he was the primary guy who busted off ISIS from that. And I mean, what was it? It's only been a matter of months, right? That he was taken off the global most wanted list, $10 million
a year. They're close bounds.
Year, something like that. Yeah. I mean, give me your general thoughts on what the hell's going on in Syria with terrorists.
Well, something like this, if it's not just BS, it may be that there are people within ISIS who, saw him on TV wearing a suit, going to the White House, going to the United Nations, and they're going, dude, you've lost the script. We're an Islamic revolutionary group, and you're hobnobbing with diplomats at the UN in New York City. You're not one of us anymore. And you see it all the time. You'll see someone who you think is a hardcore conservative politician. They're in DC for a year, and all of a sudden they're part of the swamp. And so that may be what they're seeing in him.
Yeah, but that's because Mossad caught them, diddling a whatever. I'm just saying. But Diggs Outdoors, appreciate that very much. That's my favorite 338 Lapua round, by the way. That's a 250 grain solid brass projectile. It's called a TUI, TUI, tumble upon impact. We shot some level 3 steel panels, body armor, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. And JJ Morris took the first shot with this, and it looked like a drill press went through the middle of that steel plate. But yeah, good call on 338 Lapua. It's one of my favorite calibers, one of my favorite long distance rifles as well. Round. Say again?
It's a good sniper round.
Absolutely. And Dan kills me. All right, we're into 454. Oh my God. There's no lack of humor amongst our audience, and I appreciate it. Randy, your impressions of this Jelani thing. I think he's smiling to our face, stabbing us in the back. We just released $120 billion frickin' dollars. His people are committing genocide, killing the Druze, Christians, you name it. And they put him in a suit and tie, and all of a sudden he's a good guy, and he plays basketball with our, senior military folks.
Well, I go back to what the Quran says, right? It's okay to lie to your face and smile as long as they're furthering the objective of Islam and Allah. And I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. If it wasn't, they would be doing different things in Syria. And ever since he took over, there would be different things happening. And isn't he the guy that they've got a picture of him holding 2 severed heads? Isn't that Jelani?
Yes. That's it.
If he was what he's portraying himself to be here, and we're trying to pretend that he is, none of that would have happened. Because they're diametrically opposed. It would not happen. And I think Jeff's right. I think, the other part, the people yelling, the bad guys, it happens in every sector. One of the ones I saw recently was, I can't remember his name. Who is the famous skater that's about our age now? He's Tony Hawk. Okay. Right? Tony Hawk is one of the best skateboarders that have ever lived. But if you talk to little punks on skateboard, the young guys now say he's a sellout. Right? Because he has millions of dollars.
Right.
Well, he's the one skateboarder that made it, right?
Well,
but because he has money now and he has advertisement, the kids on the street see him a little differently. So I think it's no different.
Well, Fidel Castro had 6 mansions when he died. Okay. Fidel Castro.
Oh, Castro, yeah.
Man of the people. Oh, for the proletariat. He lived high on the hog. Leonid Brezhnev, head of the Soviet Union, had one of the, if not the largest car collection in the world. Yeah. They're all for the little guy until they make it, and then they become the big guy.
How many homes does Bernie Sanders have?
3.
And how much is he worth? 50, 60, 70 million or something like that? Yeah.
So they're all hypocrites.
He's got quite a few expensive cars, too.
And I guarantee you, Mom Donnie, well, you look at AOC, is, a freaking bartender, and she's in Congress for 4 years or 6 years, whatever it is, and now she's worth $23 million.
Right.
They all cash in. They all cash in.
Yeah. The whole thing's political theater.
I don't know if Saddam was ever supposed to be a man of the people when he took over. Probably, because they all come up the same way. But you look at it, he had 30 something, right? He had 30 something, man. And the ones I saw in Baghdad, there were 2 or 3 that had toilets with gold seats on them. Now, I'm sure they were probably gold plated, but they were gold. People were taking that stuff out the door.
Yeah. Well, at one of our museums, we have a gold. I think it's a gold-plated Colt 45 that they took from one of Saddam's palaces.
Oh, we got his AK too. He's got,
or his AK. We got his. I think it's a 45. I've seen it, but I can't remember now. I think it was a 45.
Well,
they probably had both.
This one time I was back at Mar-a-Lago, just recently for that matter, and which is where I got this cool hat, by the way. It was a gift from President Trump, who attended. But somebody told me that the bathrooms for the ballroom had gold fixtures. I can tell you they have gold fixtures. I mean, it's pretty opulent, to say the least. But anyway, let's move into our last one here, and then we'll get into the main topic. So Muslim Brotherhood aligned UK Home Secretary says under the new asylum reforms, a new route is being set up for refugees to be able to work and study in this country. And when they're contributing, we will make sure there is an earlier path to settlement. The UK won't learn until a pro-British government is elected without Muslim Brotherhood involvement. 19 seconds.
We've got a lot to get through.
The principle of the new reforms.
Let me back that up.
The principle, and you are changing the principle. We've got a lot to get through.
The principle of the new reforms will always be that if your country becomes safe, that you will return. But under the new reforms, we will also be providing a new route for those who are on core protection as refugees to be able to work and study in this country.
Oh boy, I can feel my watch is fixing to go off for sure. Coming to you first, because, and I'll speak a little bit more of this in a second, but I just got home from Nashvillistan, which has been overrun by people from countries that end in stan. But this is self-inflicted genocide, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, and they say, oh yeah, you go back when your countries become safe. Well, the thing is, it'll never be safe. They will find a way to say, no, it's more dangerous. Even if UK has a higher murder rate than the country they came from, they will say, well, this country's not safe. Well, it's safer than Britain, so why are they fleeing to Britain? Well, it's for money. It's economic. It's not for their safety.
Let me just throw a couple things at you really quickly here. Number one, I hadn't been in Nashville for approximately 10 years. I was there previously on a very frequent basis for work, did not recognize Nashville at all. And when I had dinner the first night on a rooftop restaurant / bar, none of the staff who worked there spoke English. They were all, of Arabic, Muslim, orientation sort of thing. They looked at me like I had, 3 eyes growing out of my skull because I had a cowboy hat on. But a couple just quick interesting things, because you just mentioned refugee, right? So my Uber driver yesterday, I can barely understand him. And he says he's a refugee from Albania. And then he starts telling me how it's really, really hard because he's been here for 6 years and he only goes home once a year to see his wife and children. I was like, oh, how many kids do you have? He said 4. I said, how old are they? He said 6, 10, 12, and 14. And I said, and you're here as a refugee? He says, yeah, that's how I got in the country, refugee. Well, how come your wife and kids aren't with you? And he could not answer that question. He reverted back to like he couldn't understand a word I was saying. Listen to this next one. The Uber that took me to the studio. There's this Skyway Studios in Nashville. It's like going to MGM in Hollywood, for crying out loud. And it was a white guy, an older white guy. And he says to me, yeah, my daughter's a principal at a school here in the Nashville area. And 88% of the students don't speak English at all. I said, what? He says, yeah, because they've all come from the Middle East. They don't speak English. I said, So are they teaching them English as a second language? He said, oh God, no, that would take far too much effort. They translate everything with software. And he said, and 100% of the parents of these 88% don't speak a lick of English. I'll tell you what, it was a very sobering trip to Nashville. That city's just as lost or more lost. When I first, had a heart attack when I saw what was going on in Dearborn, and now it's only gotten worse. We're in trouble, man. We have been thoroughly invaded, like thoroughly invaded. So before my watch says I need to call 911 here, Randy, I'm gonna let you take a swing at this. But the shit that you see from the British government, again, I personally think it's self-inflicted genocide.
Well, they are definitely gone, right? Because Europe isn't even on our side. So that tells us what side they're on. And, I assume their government too. And we've watched, as their public now, anybody taking up for themselves are the ones being arrested, and the aggressors on the street, the Islamic folks that are raping people and walking around with knives and bats and down the street aren't getting in trouble at all. So I would say that their government is complicit in that. And then you go to, all the immigration we had the last 4 years that apparently even,
but those are future doctors and lawyers. I mean, you didn't get the memo? They're
enriching yeah. Okay. Well, we should have learned from China, right? We should have learned a lesson from China, letting all these people just come over here and go to school, and the tens of thousands and maybe even more students. We should have learned from them. And, our government is doing the same thing. I've told you what, last week or two, they've ramped it up now. Those 4 years of Biden helped them bring in all those folks so that they could get us closer to where Europe is. And if everybody doesn't know something's about to happen, well, you're just not paying attention.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the end of the Command 11 Survival Dispatch News sit rep for this evening. We're going to get into the main topic here. And I spoke to Khalid briefly on this topic a couple times previously. And there's a very specific reason that I set this as the topic tonight. Some of this information goes back, 20 years or so, as far as al-Qaeda and ISIS promoting the idea for jihadis to set fires, whether that be wildfires or throwing Molotov cocktails through your windows and torching an entire subdivision. This isn't something that's new, but I've caught some chatter recently of these secondary, tertiary, and other attacks that are planned for 9/11 2.0, that when they say soft targets, it's not just hospitals, schools, shopping malls, office buildings. It includes residential neighborhoods, which is not a big surprise. Look at what happened on 10/7. They went door to door and murdered, raped, and tortured a bunch of people like that as well, just to ramp up the fear to a whole other level. So I got thinking to myself, I don't remember who it was, but somebody said that a common tactic over there is they'll smash a window out and they'll throw, 2 or 3 burning tires in your home. And at that point in time, whether it's a Molotov cocktail or burning tires, you've got to evac. You got to come out. And if somebody wants you out of your house, you're going to have to come out. And then they're obviously just waiting there to slaughter you, sort of thing. This is a tough one to protect against. It doesn't, whether it's wildfires or protecting your home. I mean, this is not something you can easily accomplish. Now, I've had homes in the past where we had spent, $15,000, $20,000 on hurricane shutters. And when you close them, you're not getting access to any of the glass. You're certainly not throwing Molotov cocktails into my house, especially when they're cement block. Even this place is. But most people don't have those types of things on their homes, especially if you don't live in a, hurricane central like we do. But at the end of the day, the term for this is pyro-terrorism, self-explanatory. And when I dug deeper on this, they have published very detailed fire attack instructions. They've got their propaganda magazines. Inspire is one of them. They've issued religious edicts encouraging lone wolves to weaponize both the forests and neighborhoods, setting them on fire. And when coordinated fires are made, you want to talk about overwhelming first responders. I mean, we have a finite number of firefighters, and it's not hard to exceed what that finite number is, because that number is based on what would be a natural worst case scenario, not an act of terrorism like this. It's essentially, figuratively speaking, it's another WMD. It's a weapon of mass destruction. So at the end of the day, I don't think that American politicians have done a very good job of discussing this and fortifying things. I mean, we could go into a very deep rabbit hole when it comes to the Palisades and, fire hydrants that had no water in them. I was going to say fire plugs, and I thought, no, that most people won't know what a fire plug is. Those of us who grew up with Andy Griffith, we know what a fire plug is. Fire hydrant. Anyway, so the crazy thing is, I think one of the reasons that our government hasn't done anything on this, and you guys can weigh in on this just a second, but I think it's because everything's climate change. All the fires is climate change. It's got nothing to do with the fact that we haven't done any maintenance now. I can see a terrorist attack with Molotov cocktails and the left saying, well, it's climate change because they had to leave where they came from for a better life. And, they had to make things happen. Sort of everything's climate change in that wacky world, which is a big scam, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole any further. So, tonight we're going to go through some high level intelligence and situational awareness and some thoughts on target hardening your home, which again is really tough if you have glass windows. So as per usual, 5 segments. First segment is the rise of pyro-terrorism and jihadi strategy. So I've already mentioned al-Qaeda, ISIS. They've been pushing mass arson now for a couple decades. They started out pushing the wildfire things as a cheap and brutal way to hit us hard. But since then, it's grown to include residential neighborhoods. And since then, it's grown to, potentially being part of the complex coordinated terrorist attacks of 9/11 2.0 and 10 to 15 of our cities simultaneously. So one of the things, though, that I noticed, not on the residential side, but the forest fire side, was they really stressed this as a great way for lone wolves to exact create huge damage. And they're right. And pretty easy to pull off as well. And pretty hard to trace when you've got massive wildfires burning. And, when you don't do any maintenance on your forest, like Governor Newsom, you end up with a tinderbox essentially. But at the end of the day, this is not just online chatter. Oh, they might do this, or they've, discussed this. They've been promoting this heavily, like I said, for upwards of 20 years now, with the entire goal of overwhelming firefighters, first responders, and cause billions of dollars of damage that cost them virtually nothing to do. Then add the stuff, like I said, 9/11 2.0. If you have sleeper cells coming into your neighborhood and they want to get you out of your house, and they're going to burn you out, they're going to get you out of your house. And, at that point in time, we all know what happens at that point. So, Jeff, I'm going to come to you first. And I just want to get your thoughts. Like when you first, didn't drag across. There we go. When you first heard, the term pyro-terrorism years ago, what were your thoughts as far as, because my thoughts were like, holy shit, that could be really bad. But
well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a cheap way to get big, big bang for your buck. To take out a house with somebody in it, yeah, that's one way to do it. That's one way to get them out. That's what happened on October 7th. They burned a lot of those people out. They went into safe rooms and they set the houses on fire. But I think it's also going to depend on where you are, because there are parts of, Texas, Florida, that if someone walks down the street with a Molotov cocktail, they might end up with high-speed lead poisoning, because that's assault with a deadly weapon and you can defend yourself. Now, if they go into San Francisco, where the odds of encountering an armed civilian are much, much lower, they can probably get away with that. But if you're in your neighborhood and, they set a house on fire and people hear about it, they're going to come out with their guns and say, not my house, cowboy. Because that's not subtle. You know, when you set a house on fire, that is not subtle, and people are going to hear it and find out real quick, and they're going to react.
Well, Randy, I'm curious, when Baghdad fell, and I know I take you back to that point in time frequently, but it's an interesting case study. And you mentioned how people were looting, and then the marauders came out. Did they burn anything? Like, did they torch any of the buildings or anything like that?
No, you know, because honestly, because a good fair amount of them were already smoked from JDAMs, and there wasn't anything left in those buildings anyway. But the ones that were still there, no, I don't really mean a bunch of burning. There wasn't a bunch of burning going on as far as that. But, you know, it looks far different than the United States, any city in the United States. I think we would be far more susceptible to fire than anywhere in Baghdad. It's a bunch of dirt and cement and huts. So, yes, there could be some fire. But, you know, it's something like you mentioned already. It's been used in history. And as you both mentioned, it's a low budget, very easy way. It's not hard. You pack of matches is really, if you really want to get down to it, maybe all you need, depending on what you're doing. But even the one guy, right? We had that one case where the guy was a fireman, and he was actually one of the fire investigators for arson, and in California. And over years, they noticed the same freeway was where all these fires kept coming up. As it turned out, it was this guy. He set like 40 or 50 with a cigarette. He made some, you know what I mean, kind of a delayed fire mechanism with the cigarette, and was able to get away with that. But then you go to war. We've been using that forever to burn people out. We've used that, not just us, mankind. I mean, human beings.
Yeah.
You know, there was a case in Russia. One of the cities that the Germans didn't bomb was left pristine. But when they finally did come back and bomb, they used some incineraries and burned the whole thing up. Look at San Francisco back in the day. Or we can go back to our Civil War with Sherman, right? Atlanta on, burned it to the ground.
March to the
because
sea.
It's effective. It's easy to do. It's very damaging. It's hard to stop, and it's effective.
We did it in Dresden, Frankfurt, Tokyo during the war.
Oh yeah, think about Japan.
We burned out the Japanese on purpose.
Yeah,
and they had houses that were exactly prime back then, so we targeted them.
Wood and paper.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, well, Diggs Outdoors says it well. Fire's basic siege warfare.
Yep.
I agree with that. It's a great comment. So let's move into the second segment here, and this is al-Qaeda's jihad blueprints, forest jihad blueprints at that. So in 2012, al-Qaeda's Inspire magazine dropped detailed how-tos for starting huge forest fires in America, pointing at places like Montana, thick woods, all the way through to the West Coast, essentially, especially California and that whole Southwest corner. And they coined the term ember bombs, which is pretty crazy. It's such a simple thing, right? Like, not a whole lot of effort here, pretty low tech to cause billions of dollars of damage, kill people, kill animals, kill wildlife, et cetera, but at the end of the day, some of the fires, that have happened, they're not random. They were straight up economic warfare. And, even if you just start adding things up like the loss of timber, what was that timber worth? Then the cost of the properties, the homes, the jobs, and then FEMA's failure after failure after failure. I mean, this is a really wicked freaking way to attack somebody. So curious, Jeff, what did any particular reason other than the multitude of trees you think they would select Montana? Is there a psychological aspect to hitting the heartland maybe?
No, I think you need a forest, but you need an arid forest. If you try that in, say, Washington State, those forests tend to be pretty wet.
Yep.
The Japanese tried it in World War II. They sent over balloon bombs with incendiaries that were designed to, release over the United States, and the plan was to set the forest alight and do massive forest fires. Never happened. because they would land, the incendiaries would go off, and nothing burned because it rains too much. Now you go to Montana, where you do have big forests, but a lot of times, depending on time of year, it's also very arid. And if you get an area that is arid and windy, you start a fire, the embers go up, the wind carries them and drops them like little incendiary bombs everywhere downwind. That's what kills California every year when they have, their wildfires, is they have the Santa Ana winds. They have a lot of dry brush, and it just spreads like wildfire. Hence the phrase.
Yeah, it's funny that you would mention that. Cindy and I were driving south on 95 a couple weeks ago, and we haven't seen any of these happen in recent years, but it's not uncommon in Florida when we get really dry before the rainy season hits for fire to start, say, on the west side of I-95, and it'll hop the interstate. When it gets to the east side of 95, you're into, a lot of heavily populated areas. We had a rash, I want to say it was like 2010-ish time frame, where everything south of us, like from here to Vero Beach, was absolutely burned up. It was so bad that they had to replace stretches of asphalt because it literally burned up the highways. It's pretty crazy stuff. But Randy, let me bring up a picture here for you, Randy. Check this out. Let me get the right one up here. Apologies, I thought I had it queued up. There we go. So it's not just al-Qaeda that's been promoting using arson, pyro-terrorism, but it's also been ISIS. And this is from an ISIS magazine. And they're basically saying, go burn down churches in Texas. And there's a mega church on every corner in DFW. And now, unfortunately, there's a mosque in every damn corner as well. But
yeah, well, we look at it, and if we look at our own cases, right? Look at the damage it did in Malibu or in Hawaii, right? Just destroyed that place. And then same thing in Los Angeles. Now, we know that there were rich people who wanted to buy both those properties, and that's probably why it happened. But why wouldn't they follow along on those lines? Why wouldn't you? As you said, they've been talking about it for 20 years. And now we just watched two cases that no one's been held accountable. No one's been charged. All the people lost their property. It was very devastating. And if you were wanting to destroy as much as possible, fire would be a good way to do it.
I don't know the numbers. I'm sure somebody in the audience can point it out, but how many billions of dollars damage were done in the Palisades fire, and how many billions of dollars of damage were done in Hawaii?
It's got to be in the billions. It has to be between the two.
Yeah.
And Texas is a big open area. And then we have a lot of land that's burnable. And certainly churches are burnable. If you wanted to do that, that's what you would do. It makes sense to me that they would target that. I don't like it, obviously, but they're only looking at doing as much damage as possible. You know what I mean? It's easy. They don't have to do anything. Just get somebody to start a fire.
I looked it up. Palisades fire estimated $20 to $25 billion.
Oh goodness!
In insured losses.
And that's without Hawaii. That's just
that's not the other fire in California that was going on at the same time. It had a different name because it was in a different place, maybe Loma Linda or somewhere like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I saw something on Dano there. I just want to now I know what's wrong with him. He was in the deuce. He's an 82nd guy.
That's too
airborne.
Too funny. Randy, as you were talking though, I was thinking 2014 we had record drought conditions in North Texas DFW for 5 years. You remember that? The ground
happens here regularly.
The ground in North Texas at that time was like cement. It was drier than a popcorn fart, all cracked to hell. And then when we finally did get rain, the ground couldn't soak up and everything got flooded out from it. But
that's for everybody, because as you know, when it gets that dry, you can't water your yard, or you have specific times and days and a little space that you can water your yard. So that happens here all the time. Now, last couple of years, we haven't had one that bad, but you're right. It wasn't too many years ago. It was regularly that we would go through one 4 or 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
I think that's why they're doing all the cloud seeding, because Texas isn't even hiding that they are.
Right. So before we move into segment number 3, I do want to mention there's a lot of resources out there. When you dig for them, it's not hard to find. Like, check out this one here. First Responders Toolbox is the name of this publication. You can see it's a National Counterterrorism Center in the top corner. Well, everything's backwards here, up that way. But mitigating the threat of terrorist-initiated arson attacks on wildland urban interface areas. So basically, as you can see, there's about half a dozen pages to this. The idea is, Randy and Jeff, like when things are just dry, as you just described, Randy, you can be on the edge of suburbia and set the ground on fire because it's so dry, and it takes out all the homes with it. You don't even have to be seen. You don't have to be throwing Molotov.
Well, the wind does it all for you.
Right.
As everybody knows, if you're out in the middle of a field with nothing but cotton, or like a big field of hay, or one of those that's just full of grass, if you're in the middle of it when a fire starts there and the wind catches it, you can't run fast enough to get out. That's a fact. That's how fast it moves.
Yeah, it's incredible. So again, this is not all old information, by the way. So here's one, that's 2020, for example. A new video from the Islamic State's media wing tells followers that arson is the highest rated of the low-skill terror tactics and encourages fire attacks, with the devastation and death toll of the 2018 Camp Fire in California highlighted as an example. The 4-minute video, Incite the Believers, issued by Al Hayat Media Center, released in both English and Arabic, shows items such as a power drill and a handgun, while noting that would-be jihadists may look around yourself and you do not find a weapon that you can use to subdue the enemy of Allah. It shows ISIS publications, including Dabiq magazine and the weekly Al-Naba newsletter, only the latter still published, that have included calls for lone jihadists to act or offered tactic tutorials. The video also shows scenes of past attacks, including the Orlando mass shooting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But again, I feel like we had some discussion around this as a country years ago, but it seems like it's kind of fallen on deaf ears. And it seems to me that if nothing else, that these jihadis have a very long memory. Nothing ever goes away with these guys. It goes on for centuries, if not.
I've mentioned that many times.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move into the next segment here, segment number 3. So this is called ISIS's 5-star arson playbook. You can't make this stuff up at all. So it actually started the year before the one I just showed you, but it started in their Rumya magazine 2017, and they slapped a 5-star warning on fire attacks, telling their followers to torch everything, farms, city blocks, even massive wildfires. They laid out fatwas urging Molotov cocktails, quick start fires in crowded spots like apartments or schools, hyping how smoke alone could choke out responders and rack up body counts without fancy explosives. And I come back to thinking, you smash the window out, or they smash the window out and they throw a couple burning tires in, the smoke is going to get to you probably before even the fire will. And it's just NFG. But anyway, drawing from their own, call it wins in the Middle East, ISIS sold this as like one lone wolf gold is what they called it. Low risk, high panic, low cost, and turn U.S. suburbs into complete nightmares. Like there's no other way.
And then you almost can't catch them. You have to have somebody see them.
Right.
It's almost impossible to catch them.
Especially on those outer lying areas where they're not, they started out of the, plain sight of people and stuff. But at the end of the day, they did put a pretty big push on this not that many years ago as being like one of the best tools in the lone wolf, toolbox, so to speak. So, I mean, it's probably not hard to deduce, Jeff, but I mean, is there any surprise that they rated it 5 stars? It was the only terrorist attack vector that they rated 5 stars. I don't think it's very surprising, but it just makes me shake my head how evil these people are.
Well, it's simple and effective. You don't need an ID to to make a Molotov cocktail, all you need is a bottle, a rag, and some gasoline.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere and buy a book of matches or a cigarette lighter. You don't, so yeah, there's nothing to hold them back, nothing to slow them down. It's pathetically simple. Yeah. And it can be extremely effective. And if it doesn't, okay, you try and start a fire and it doesn't catch, and you leave and it doesn't catch. Well, there's nothing for anyone to report to even come looking for you about.
Yep.
How many food processing plants burned down in the past 4 years or so? And out of all those food processing plants that burned down, how many, I'm asking you to speculate, but rough number, how many were solved? I have not heard of any of them where they said, we caught the guy who did this.
Yeah, you hear about the fires, but I don't know that I saw any that was confirmed to be arson. And if they assume that it was, equipment overheating, a short circuit in a motor or something like that they're even going to really investigate that much. And fire marshal is going to come in. The fire started over here. There's a burn up electrical motor over there. That's what started the fire. So yeah, the best arson is the one that they don't think is arson. It's like the best murder is the one that looks like natural causes. If no one knows it's a murder, they're not going to investigate it.
So maybe somebody in the audience could just look this up quickly. How many food processing plants burned down during the Biden admin, and maybe chuck it into the live chat so we can see it. But it statistically, it doesn't seem very likely that many food processing plants just happen to catch on fire. That's the way I see it, at least. Randy, refresh my memory. Were there any food processing plants in North Texas that got torched during that run?
I don't think so. I don't recall one. But again, like you mentioned, you hear about the fire makes the news, and then that's the last thing you ever hear of it. There's never come back and them saying we caught the guy or this was the reason.
Right.
We got no answers for any of those. And I think it had to be 5 or 10 across the country, right? Had to be.
Oh,
maybe more than that. It had to be. And so,
it was over 100. It was over 100 food processing plants.
But again, that's all by design. It was no different than Bill Gates buying up farm property or paying farmers not to farm. Now we got Chinese buying farmland. I mean, all that squeezes us down to this moment where when this thing happens, how easy will the food supply chain just unravel?
Oh,
because we're not as strong as we used to be from 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago when those things were pumping at full measure.
100%.
And Jeff's right. It's the perfect crime. Because if they don't ever find out how it created, they don't carbon charge it in arson, you don't get caught. There's no investigation.
Yeah, and if you don't solve it, how do you prevent it? But
I think you're right. That's how evil these people are. And again, it goes back to the same thing we've been saying for months and years now. When they tell you who they are, you should believe them.
Yeah, no, exactly. So one last question to wrap up segment 3 before we move on. And since you fought these guys, what's the psychological power of declaring something a fatwa amongst these jihadis? Like, does that make them feel like they're on a mission from Allah or something like that?
I think that's exactly what it is. And it doesn't matter if it's the jihad, the fatwa, or a couple of other names that they use in certain things. These are indicators, right? That certainly the person doing it knows, okay, this is what's next. But I think it also lets everybody else in the neighborhood know. Yeah, we did this. Don't mess with it. Because I've told you, and people can say it all day long, and I understand some of the things Khalid says too. I wish he was here tonight, but I've watched it myself. It only takes one radical to move in the neighborhood and everybody in that neighborhood changes. And they will not go against that guy. They won't do it.
I believe it 100%. Great comment here from Fun Time.
Yes.
Quintuple 7 there. If you have the greatest army in the world, if you can't feed that army. So Randy, we've discussed this on air before, but one of the things that we're really, really good at is getting food and water, sustenance to the frontline guys much better than our enemies. But even that aside, if you break it down to the individual level, like each of us, you can't fight if you're hungry. And,
well, and we didn't have, before all those other conflicts, including this one, we didn't have food manufacturers burning down. We didn't have bridges getting knocked down by ships. We didn't have trains being derailed. We didn't have all these plane crashes. We didn't have any of this stuff. So now that's compounding the problem. So no matter how good we were, I don't know, would we still be that good now? Even in our own country, if all this is shut down, that is going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's just as you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, the rule of threes, right? And they always say, you can go 3 minutes without breathing, 3 days without water. I've always questioned that 3 days without water. And the reason I've questioned it is because when I was competing, for example, if I walked around at 225 pounds and I'd be 225 Monday morning, I would weigh in Friday morning, 24-hour weigh-ins at 198.4 pounds, which is 90 kilograms. And then I would step on the platform on Saturday back at 225 plus pounds. Like when you're setting world records, everybody is up a weight class based on what their weigh-in was. And the way that you do it is you drink 3-4 gallons of water Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you run into the can every 10 minutes. And Monday and Tuesday, you have a little bit of boiled chicken. There's no sodium in anything that you eat whatsoever. But Thursday morning, you turn off the water. So for the entire day of Thursday through to the weigh-in on Friday, you drink 1 cup of water and that's it. But your body's used to going to the bathroom every 10 minutes. So you piss all the weight off, right? 1 gallon of water is 8 pounds. And, so steaming hot baths, the whole 9 yards, a miserable process. But what I'm getting at is I've gone a couple days under physical duress with no water, and cognitively you start to check out. So maybe you can make it 3 days, but that's assuming that after 2 days, you're still making lucid decisions when you've had.
I think that's a rough average. You know what I mean? It's really going to depend on where are you at when that 3 days starts. When you run out of water, are you hydrated or are you already dehydrated? I think that that's make a big determining factor if you make it 3 days or more than 3 days for sure.
Yeah, I was just getting at the mental aspect. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was going to say it also depends on your physical activity.
Yep.
If you're someplace where it's not hot, you're just laying down for 3 days. Yeah, I can see you doing that. But if you're someplace that's hot and dry and that just breathing sucks water out of your body, like in Arizona in the summertime, when it's 110 degrees and 3% humidity, every breath you take just sucks water out of your body. You're not going to last 3 days. You'd be lucky to last 1 day.
Yeah, good. Ain't that the truth? So anyway, that's the first 3 segments down. We've got 2 more segments to go. Just want to briefly mention that if you go over to survivaldispatch.news, that is our Substack. And if you want to join as a guardian, there's a lot of value adds. It's only $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, gets you 2.5 months for free. But we currently have 5 crazy busy private encrypted signal channels on various topics. There's one that's kind of like a general conversation. There's another one that our news team runs. We've got 12 kick-ass individuals, and I don't want to name any of them because if I forget one of them, I'm going to feel bad about it, but they crank a shit ton of news through that channel. We have another channel that really took off, the survival and prepping channel. The amount of information that's being exchanged between people on everything from recipes to homesteading, gardening, to Starlink and everything in between is pretty impressive. We have another channel, called SDEN, Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System. So when you sign up as a guardian, if we send out any emergency notifications, they go to your email, they go to our Substack. So you can see up top right above the word pyro, it says SDENs. So that's for guardian members to go in there and get the notifications. It goes to the SDENs channel on Signal, and it also goes to anybody who has the POC Link radios that's a guardian. It goes to them as well. So we make sure that we get it out to everybody, as fast and, with 100% delivery rate is the goal, especially for those types of emergency things. I'll speak a little bit more on the Survival Dispatch Guardian stuff later on, but I want to kickstart things here and move right into the next segment. So we're in segment number 4 now, which is from wildfires to urban hell, escalating tactics. So, you know, wildfires grab headlines, jihadi plans. It's not like they stop at the tree line. And, you know, so again, they have a focus on wildfires, but urban/suburban hits as well. Think of doing things like, even, I know Molotov cocktails and tires is kind of low tech and stuff, but it doesn't take much to rig a gas line, you know, where you have valves and stops that are above grade. And, you know, if you let an explosion off there, that would have massive rippling effects, and Lord only knows how big of a fire that could potentially start. And now think of doing something like that in a densely populated or a densely visited space. Boy, you could take out a lot of people pretty quickly. That didn't come from me, by the way. That came from me studying this topic. So, you know, you got everything from, pardon me, bombs to flamethrowers. I've got a flamethrower that's freaking insane, like absolutely insane. And I mean, I can be 25, 30 feet away from something and hit it with pinpoint accuracy and set it on fire in a New York minute. And it's low tech. It wasn't very expensive. As a matter of fact, I use it to light our fire pit all the time. But at the end of the day, it could be a car crashing into something that's loaded with explosives, that's purposely designed to set everything around it on fire. I mean, I think with the fires, probably the scariest aspect of it is the chain reaction, like all the things that follow, not just more fires, but everything else that follows with it. You get into gas lines, you get into explosions, you get into buildings catching on fire ground level and people being trapped above. And if you have that many fires that there aren't enough firefighters to respond, that's a pretty volatile, you know, position to be in. And you know what pops to mind, Randy and Jeff too, like right away? I'm thinking Benghazi. Look, they smoked our freaking people out of that building, you know, and that was a pretty low tech way of getting them out. And we all know how that ended, which, by the way, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much. Our guardians know about this, but Tyrone Woods, who was one of the Navy SEALs killed there, Mike Glover ended up coming into possession. He bought it of Ty's truck, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the guys from Carnival put $20,000 in play and had that truck restored as a tribute to Tyrone. Pretty friggin' amazing. I want Mike Glover and the guys from Carnival to speak to it more so than me, though, because it's their thing that they did, and it's just an incredible way to honor him. But anyway, cutting back, like Benghazi, smoking people out. I mean, this is low tech, high ROI for these sons of bitches, and it doesn't take long to overwhelm all of the responses. I mean, if you think back to the British way of building, I don't know if they still do this or not, but back in the day, like every city block is attached, right? Like every building in a city block was attached. So when, you know, they were getting bombed in London by the Germans and London was on fire, crying out loud, you set one side of that square on fire. Next thing you know, the whole city block's in flames. It's pretty devastating stuff for sure. But Jeff, I'm just curious, the entire time that you were in the CIA, did you ever run across, or did you ever hear of, even if it was secondhand, of plots where, maybe not even jihadis, but just bad people in general, you know, plotted any type of large scale fires?
Not that I recall, but I'll say one thing: they trained us on how to start fires using common chemicals that would create a delayed pyrotechnic device. And the idea is okay, you're doing a surveillance detection route through a city and someone's following you and you need a distraction. Well, you would have this on you. It would be in an envelope, and there'd be one side would be chemical A, one side is chemical B, and you fold it in the middle. Well, you take it out of your pocket, you knead the two chemicals together and you throw it in a dumpster. And then depending on the mixture, you know how much time you have. It might be a minute, it might be 2 minutes. It bursts into flames, sets the dumpster on fire. Now that's your distraction, so you can go somewhere else.
That's pretty brilliant, to be quite frank. Randy, I'm curious from a munitions standpoint, and unfortunately Mike Sterling's not with us, but What kind of, call it, low-tech bombs or munitions do these guys typically have access to? Like stuff they had, let's say, in Baghdad when you were there, that isn't just designed to be a bomb that, you know, goes kaboom, but it's meant to be a bomb that starts a big fire.
You know, I don't really know. I'm not EOD. I did see some of the, you know what I mean? Obviously, some of the explosive they used, but they were all typically explosive where they rigged up a mine or artillery round, or even the British equivalent to C4. That's what they have over there.
Okay.
But, you know, they were very low tech. You look at the EFPs, the things I got hit by that Iran shipped, that I could, you know, Iran brought them on the battlefield, and then they trained up some guys to continue doing that. And so I just kind of equate it to being like meth, right? Any fool can make it in their bathtub, apparently. The EFPs were the same way. They're not very hard to construct, not very hard to make. You just had to have the copper plate. But then something to put it in the plastic explosives, that's it. It's not complicated stuff. And even some of the mines and the artillery rounds. Now, again, I'm not going to mess with them, no matter how simple it looks.
Right.
I'm not going to mess with them. I'm going to get Mike or some other EOD dude to come in here, or my Charlie to come mess with this thing, but I'm not going to mess with it.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Another one, we were taught, you don't even need the copper. We were taught how to make a shape charge with a wine glass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
You could probably put anything. He's right. Anything in front of it.
Yeah. You know, the copper, what it does is it melts and it makes a copper jet.
Yep.
Okay.
But if you don't use the copper, there's still a jet of hot gases.
Yep.
The copper just made it penetrate farther.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jeff, just because you're the engineer here, I was thinking when Randy was talking, I was thinking about napalm, where when the planes dropped it, it's just like sticky shit on fire.
Yeah,
sort of
Vaseline and gasoline, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that something that these guys have got at their disposal? Like, it's that simple, and it just make a big old sticky firebomb?
Yeah, you can get, I mean, you could use Vaseline, you could use pine tar, you could use, you know, roof repair tar, you know, anything that's sticky, you mix it with, you know, something's got to be volatile. Diesel won't do it, but gasoline will. And then you throw it, you set it on fire, and it's gooey. You know, the fire is coming from the gasoline. The tar will also burn, but it gives you the adhesion, the stickiness to it. But napalm, original napalm was just petroleum jelly and aviation fuel. That was it.
Yeah, that's like about as low tech as it gets. Randy, do you want to add something?
I was going to say there's several ways like that you can make an incendiary very cheaply, very easily with going to the drugstore.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a fact. So it's one of those reasons why we're saying, you know, this is like one of the perfect ways, right? Because it's very low tech. It's very easy. You might not even get caught, and it doesn't take a lot of supplies or money to start fires. It really doesn't.
Well, before we move into the next segment, and I know there's some questions coming up on this, ideas for fortifying your home against a fire attack. I mean, what are your thoughts, Randy?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking that, considering all the mosque in the area, you know, and I've been kind of vocal, not only just on here, but on X and some other places. I don't know. I'm going to have to consider that fact, because when you said that, if they just rolled up. Now, the good thing is I don't have a bunch of windows. I do have some windows, and the one I have up front is in the front room. So but they have to get over the garden. So I don't know. You know, I'd go back to barriers, you know, however you can make those between the road and your house. So they can't just run right up or drive right up even and throw something through the window. A fence, I don't know. They could probably drive through the fence. And we went through plenty of fences ourselves back in the day. So that may not help, but I'm just saying, you know, I've been considering that what you just asked me this entire show, because I was thinking, well, if they just showed up here and tossed something in, what would I do? And now I've got to come up with a plan for that.
Well, while you were mentioning that, I was thinking of Jeff. Jeff, didn't you mention at one point in time of like fire breaks, like ditches in your area? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
We do, because we have wildfires here. And so what they'll do, and they did it to our main road coming into the area, they widened it, but then, so it's a lot wider than it was. But then beyond the road, there's probably 15 to 20 feet of just dirt. It used to be mesquite and brush and scrub basically right up to the pavement. Now the pavement's wider, and there's probably a 20-foot on either side cleared area. So if fire comes from one direction, it's less likely to jump the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would throw something out there just because we mentioned we'd give people some solutions. You can buy hurricane shutters anywhere in the country, but again, they're pretty expensive. But a lower cost option is you can look up hurricane film for windows. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it goes on the inside of your windows. A lot of times it's tinted, which is good, helps with the AC bill. But it almost makes the glass break like the tempered glass in your windshield, not the side windows. But the only reason I say that is because I've been T-boned before, and when the side window smash, it's slice the shit out of my face. But that particular product, relatively speaking, not crazy expensive, good way of stopping somebody from getting something through your window. Easily, at least. At the end of the day, if somebody wants to get into your home, though, they're going to get into your home. It's really how much time and how much you can slow them down. But beyond that, pardon me, another piece for your security that I don't know that enough people really run them and in as many rooms as they should be, but glass break sensors. I've actually had glass break sensors catch somebody who was breaking into my office and managed to get the cops there before the guy could get away. So you could do glass break sensors, all the regular security stuff you would do, like cameras, etc. But for the fire thing in particular, it's really securing those windows. So you either have storm shutters, hurricane shutters, or something like the film that makes the glass really, really hard to break. And I mean, those are the most obvious things I can think of. Do you guys want to add anything else that before we move to the next one?
Well, it's one thing if someone's trying to break into your house. It's another thing if they're setting a fire, like a wildfire. In that situation, you need to have non-flammable barrier or distance between your home and anything that's flammable. I keep at least 20 feet in all directions around my house with no vegetation, and it's covered with gravel. There is nothing there for it to burn. So I can't get a wildfire that will get right up next to my house. Then my house is stucco on top of that, so it's concrete. So the only thing really on the outside that can be exposed to flame and catch on fire are the eaves, and they're up high, but again, 20 feet from any fire source.
Yeah, that's good advice. Appreciate that, Jeff. So that's the end of segment number 4. Moving into the final segment number 5, the devastating fallout and how to fight back. So we've had FBI, DHS bulletins speak at length over, call it the past 15, 16 years on the pyro-terrorism risk. Although I kind of feel, from my perspective, that we had a fair bit of attention on that for a short period of time, then it kind of seems to have petered out, and I don't hear people speaking of it, which again is the primary reason I chose it for tonight, just to kind of bring it up so that it's top of mind again for people as we face these, incoming horrible attacks, 9/11 2.0. But at the end of the day, this is exactly what I don't remember which one of you said it earlier, but this is exactly where the FBI is going to say, well, yeah, it was on our radar. They were on our radar. It was on our radar. It's been
everybody's on their radar, and nobody's on their radar.
Right. Exactly. And I can see them using that same old tired line, over and over again. But something that just dawned on me is, I mean, what happens if you've got, let's say you got 10 sleeper cells in a heavily populated area, and they strategically set fires in areas where they all come together in a relatively short period of time. Holy crap. Like now you're looking at a Palisades type of deal, right? Where there's no way to fight back against that. That's a straight up evac situation, unless you have millions of dollars and you have one of these homes that has the exterior, fire suppression systems. But anyway, at the end of the day, the jihadi pyro-terrorist aspect to it. My concern is that the chatter that's been, thrown about lately is that we could potentially see it in attacks on residential homes as soft targets in some of the, 9/11 2.0 follow-on attacks. And it's definitely something worth thinking about. I mean, what can you do if you're in a neighborhood where the homes are so close together, you can dang near jump from one rooftop to the next? If you harden your home and they don't harden their home, eventually, if you have asphalt shingles for a roof, they're flammable. And we're back to the ember bombs, right? It blows off the home next to you, lands on your roof, and poof. Yes, you can get fireproof shingles. You get like fiberglass shingles, those sort of things. But the vast majority of them are based on, tar/oil products, and they have a high level of flammability. But anyway, at the end of the day, we have had issues with droughts. I don't think it's climate, change or anything like that. But it seems to me, you guys can comment on it, but it seems to me that if I'm a jihadi and I'm looking at using fire as a low-tech way to cause big-time pain and suffering, I'm probably going to pick somewhere that's had drought conditions that makes it that much, more effective. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that or not, but beyond that, this seems to me to be one of the hardest things to protect against. And, I think the synchronized fire thing, I'm kind of hung up on that for some reason. I don't know why you tweaked me on that, but you did. So here's my next question, and I'll go to you first, Jeff, for it. There have been career arsonists, right? Like organized crime. They used to call them, whether it be the Greek fires, the Italian fire. I mean, I'm of Greek heritage and descent, so there'd be lots of bullshit insurance claims. Greeks would set their restaurants on fire, et cetera, et cetera. But is there anything that these jihadis could potentially learn from those professional arsonists that we've had in the past?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, usually professional arsonists do it for money. And their idea is to start a fire without it being obvious that it was arson, so that there's an insurance payout. Because if there's arson, they don't pay. The insurance companies don't pay out. Greek fire, the original Greek fire, was invented by Archimedes. It was a weapon, and they used it because to set enemy ships on fire. But the beauty of Greek fire is that even if it fell in the water, it still burned, and so it was pretty useful in that sense. But the other thing we got to consider, though, is once they start doing this, are you going to get copycats? How many people, there be a fire season, there's all these fires, you'll find some little lunatic who goes out there and starts a fire. And it happened in California. I know they arrested 2 or 3 people who went out and started a fire just because they wanted to watch it burn. There's no shortage of mentally messed up people, and they may jump on that bandwagon and make it worse.
Yeah, I see a question that's scrolled by here, but basically somebody was asking, how do you fireproof your roof? And that's steel roof, metal roof is the way to do that.
Metal or concrete.
Vitrified clay tiles, concrete tiles.
Yeah, I got concrete.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to go at all, for sure. Plus they last forever and a day.
Yep.
So Randy, I don't know if you've looked into this. I know I was a little bit late with the brief today, but do you see anybody on the government side doing anything to beef up defenses against pyro-terrorism? Because I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. Do you see them beefing up anything in any aspect of anywhere that would be classified as some sort of protection or hardening? I mean, let's just look at the power grid. The CIA has been telling us for 2 full years that there's going to be a major attack on the power grid, but nobody's done one thing about it, including our politicians and all these people that are running the country. Not one thing is done about it. So no, I haven't seen any kind of, and now they're ignoring this whole attack. So,
well, here's a question for the audience, and maybe somebody can look it up quickly. How many Christian or Christian derivatives churches have been burned down in the past 10 years in Western Europe, while even Eastern Europe and Canada and the U.S. I know there was a ton in Canada and Europe. I mean, well, was it Notre Dame? Was that the big one in Paris?
Yeah, yep, sure was.
Well, there were a rash of them in Canada because someone put out this bullshit story that the Catholic Church, eons ago they found all the bodies of dead children that's on Catholic properties, of orphanages and things like that, and that it was some systematic effort to try and kill the indigenous people. Well, it turned out it was 100% bullshit. But you had these leftists who went out and were setting fires to Catholic churches as a way to get even though they were getting even for something that never happened.
Yeah, good
Well,
point.
I think you're right on one thing. There will be some copycats, when we see all the unhappy people. Well, we'll just say the anti-Americans, the ones that are on the side that hates this country, they'll jump in. Antifa and all those I saw now, they busted some in Texas right here recently, a whole group of them, but apparently they're training them in all 50 states. So I would bet that you're going to see some copycats pile on there, and we'll have a bigger issue with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's just roll with that for a second. How hard do you think that makes it then to determine who's really behind this stuff? So in other words, to look at it from this perspective, you've got some jihadi pyro-terrorism, then you have these copycats, which adds, not bad pun, but fuel to the fire. Well, let me pose it to Jeff. Jeff, does that not make it harder to try and pinpoint it down to this was an actual act of terror committed by this particular group? But wait a minute, we see these other ones are the same, and it's not the same people. What does that do from an intelligence standpoint?
Well, it muddies the water. First of all, you're investigating 5 incidents, and 2 of them were terrorism and 3 of them were copycats. You still got to investigate all 5 now, and then you may figure out they're copycats, but you still got to punish the people who did it. So yeah, it just makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, this is an absolutely crazy topic, to be quite honest with you. But that's the 5th and final segment, and then we just end this by saying that terrorists are constantly adapting, but when they find something that works, they stick with it. And this is clearly, as Randy and Jeff both point out, this has been a common tactic used in war by everybody. But I don't know that there's a whole lot that you can do beyond, doing everything you possibly can to harden your home. So something that prevents anything from coming through the window. So, whether it be hurricane shutters, hurricane film, potentially bars, which look absolutely horrible. I wouldn't want those on my home, that's for sure. Not maybe if you lived in Miami, maybe. But anyway, do what you can to, make your home a little bit more fireproof. And at the end of the day, if your place looks like a harder target, these guys are going to be in a rush to get as many people killed and hurt and maimed as they possibly can. 9/11 2.0. So if your home looks a little bit harder to contend with than your neighbor's home, unfortunately, they're going to go to your neighbor's. But target hardening works in general, whether it's, physical security, break-ins, fires, whatever the case may be. Target hardening is a thing, and it works well. I'd let everybody know that if you see something suspicious, obviously report it. But it's easy to find a lot of information online as far as ISIS and al-Qaeda is concerned on how they instruct people to use fires as a weapon. If you have a minute, read a couple of those articles, because it may just tweak you when you see something to go, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. I think I'm going to report that to, the SO or PD sort of thing. Jeff, here's an interesting number I came across, by the way, and I just noticed it in the brief. Create a defensible space by clearing vegetation within 30 feet of your home, not 20 feet, 30 feet.
Oh man, now I got to work more.
You got to go. You know what I would like both of you to speak to before we move on to the conflict of questions and stuff is, Randy, give me your thoughts on having an evacuation plan. We did them all the time. I'm sure they still do them, but when we were kids in school, we always had these evac plans. What about the prospect of doing that and practicing it for your homes, especially if you got a 2 or 3 story home?
Well, it worked for the schools. That's why we still do it to this day. That's why we still have the drills, right? So if one ever actually does happen, everybody knows what to do and where to go and where to be and where to meet up. I think it's an excellent plan. You should do that because it comes down to the same thing, right? Whether you're having to beat feet somewhere and come up with some rally points, you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And you should have a plan in case someone attacks your house or they come in and set it on fire. You should have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you're going to shit the bed in that moment, and you may miss some crucial moments of where you could have been proactively doing stuff. Again, it goes back to the same adage on the baseball diamond, right? Know where you're going to go with the ball if it's hit to you before the pitcher throws it.
Yeah, good point.
Because it's a fact, certainly in Little League, when kids, if they don't, and you're sitting there kicking sand in the, with your feet playing in the dirt, and all of a sudden the ball's hit to you, you got it in your hand, you don't know what to do. It's the same thing. Always know where you're going to go with the ball before the pitcher throws it.
Good advice. So, Jeff, before I come to you, I got to address this. I don't know if this is a legitimate question, if it's a troll or whatever the case may be, but why would ISIS attack America? Really? Like, is this really a serious question? We bombed the shit out of the Middle East. They hate our fucking guts.
Yeah, they hate us.
Why do you think they would attack us?
And we killed.
We're the great infidel, even if we hadn't bombed them.
We're the great Satan.
Yeah.
They hate our fucking guts. They've all joined together under the banner of the Islamic Army, Taliban, al-Qaeda, ISIS, TTP. The list goes on. Boko Haram, Haqqani, blah, 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 blah. They're all ganged up against us. The intel is super strong. I can't believe somebody would seriously ask this question. So I'm going to have to assume it's either a bot or a troll, because, we've got the hero of the day, and Sunday nights I do, the retard of the day. Maybe this guy here, that's a dumbass of the day right there, because you got to be, pretty low IQ to, and pardon me, but I just have zero tolerance for this type of crap anymore, because
I think, and it's just my personal opinion, because of the timing of when ISIS developed and became ISIL and then moved forward, I think this was the plan all along.
There you go.
Came up. This is why they were.
John Curry knows why, because I pissed them off.
That's right. Well, you definitely pissed them off, Chris.
Well,
it's all your fault, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I've had quite a few threats made against me as of recent. Not as bad as some other people like Sarah.
Well, it's just your wife when she's pissed.
Yeah.
I wish.
Just turn her loose on him.
I wish. John may not be too far off the mark on that one. So anyway, actually, with that being said, it's that time of night. I love this part right here. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. Again, it's like Monday Night Football. Just call me John Madden, although I'm probably half as fat as he was. But either way, we got a good one for tonight, and it's really on topic. Is Jake Lang. I don't know if y'all caught this, of him being in Dearborn, and if you saw the follow-on stuff, the bullshit that the Muslim mayor of Dearborn threw out there to say, we welcome everybody here. Well, it's just a couple weeks ago, he was caught on camera saying the exact opposite thing. You had people assaulting Jake Lang when he speaks to the cop, who, of course, is Muslim. He's got this smile on his face and basically says, yeah, no, we're not going to take any reports, blah, 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 blah. But this cracks me up here. 53 seconds, and you'll see why this cracks me up.
I believe they're going to cancel the 6:30 City Hall meeting because everybody's chimping the fuck out. They're chimping the fuck out. I don't have bananas. Chill out. I don't have bananas.
You guys catching this? Stop chimping out. I don't have bananas.
This is not America. This is an insurgency. They are taking over our country. They're taking over our country. They want us all dead.
Wow, what's happening right now? People are pushing. Wow. This is Dearborn, Michigan right now.
Yes, this is Dearborn, Michigan. Any races is not welcome. No races here. If you can't be peaceful, but every race is welcome. If you're a racist, you're not welcome.
At all. We do not.
Every race is welcome. 1, 2, 3. Our president is a pedophile.
Says the guy who worships a pedophile, right?
Oh, I saw people trying to. So I just want to read this, right? Because we were talking about it the other day, and I'm going to start with a little part. The first thing I saw that reminded me, it is Theodore Roosevelt, right? And he says, there is no 50-50 allegiance to this country. A man is either an American and nothing else, or he's not an American at all. And really that comes from his biggest quote, which was, in the first place, we should insist that if immigrants who come here in good faith become an American and assimilate himself to us, he shall be treated an exact, oops, I got a crack, hang on. He shall be treated as an exact equal with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate against against such a man because of creed, birthplace of origin. But this is predicated upon the person's becoming in every facet an American and nothing but an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he's an American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room but for one flag, the American flag. We have room but for one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people. And that is a fact. And what you see there is what I mentioned. You saw it. It was all over X. They said all kinds of things, and they want to try to say that these guys are the provocateurs. But here's reality, pal. You're in Michigan, in Dearborn, Michigan, in the United States, and it's their perfect right to hold a peaceful protest. When you come out and agitate them, you are the provocateurs. You are the ones that should be arrested, period.
All right, so let's move into the Guardian submitted news story of the day. This is from Shannon G. This is pretty crazy. Costa del Sol horror. Swedish mafia uses teen hitmen and orders murders like a pizza. A new horror trend is emerging right on the sunny Costa del Sol. Swedish crime bosses are hiring teenagers, sometimes barely old enough to drive, as contract killers. These are the so-called baby hitmen and are being recruited using encrypted messaging apps, and they're deployed across southern Spain, according to police sources. Jeff, you want to take a swing at this? I mean,
well, the Colombian drug gangs did this back in the 90s quite a bit. You know, you always hear about the sicarios, you know, the hitmen, but they had the baby sicarios. They would take teenage kids, you know, 15, 16 years old. They would conduct the hits because they wouldn't get in as much trouble legally if they got caught. They couldn't throw them in jail for life.
Yeah, I get it completely. Randy, do you want to weigh in on this before we do the conflicted question?
Well, it's what evil does. You know what I mean? That's what it does. And I've mentioned it many times, you know, when I was in Iraq, and I'm sure it was the same way in Afghanistan, you know, certainly once they became mature combat zones, it was teenagers that were out on the street doing all the stuff. Basically, that is who they use. And it's the same people, like we said, that they find the disenfranchised teenager to then radicalize that guy, you know? So this doesn't surprise me. This is what happens. And people shouldn't be surprised that they're using teenagers. Heck, they do it in the hood here because they know the guy isn't going to get life.
That's right.
Once he turns 21, he'll be out in a few months.
Yep, exactly. All right. So conflict question tonight. Gordon is a natural leader and frequently finds himself in jeopardy. This personal sacrifice keeps the group safe, but it also puts his family in harm's way. Should a great leader assume all of the risk, or can heroism be taught? Just for the heck of it, I'm going to go to you first tonight, Randy.
What was that? The conflicted question?
Yeah. Can heroism be taught, or is it just something inherent?
Well, here's reality. Like, and we got a little example, and I hate to use this example because Tom Hanks is in the movie, but Saving Private Ryan, right? Look at the journalist. You remember the journalist?
Yes.
When he went and found the journalist, he's like, "Get your rifle, you're going." But hey, I don't do that.
Yeah.
Remember, the guy didn't even want to go. And then when he got out in the combat, he found out real quick, which he already knew. He was scared shitless. Now, lucky for him, he survived long enough to finally become a little heroic, but that doesn't mean he was going to keep doing it afterwards, right? And I don't think you can teach like the true, it's the same thing in the athlete world, right? When people get tired, do you ramp up or do you die off? You can't teach that. The real athletes ramp up.
Yeah.
The average and less die down. You can't teach that. It's no different than hero. And again, hero is a very loose term today. And can you teach everybody to jump on the grenade when it comes in there and it's in the middle of you and your buddies? No, you can't teach that.
Yeah,
that is something that's inherently deep inside you. And it comes from service of others, I do believe, because everybody that I've ever read, certainly the ones that survived, and there's a couple of Marines from the GWAT, right? Did the same thing, jumped on a grenade. What made them do that? It wasn't a thought. It just happened. It was their instinct and they did it.
Instinctual. Yeah, exactly. Jeff, your thoughts?
I don't think heroism can be taught, but I think leadership can. And in this case, I think it's imperative. In fact, it's a duty of Gordon to help train other people who can be leaders too, because he could die tomorrow. He could break a leg tomorrow. And without him, is the group going to collapse? There's got to be somebody in the wings to be able to take his place. And it's incumbent upon him to find those people and to train those people. And he might be surprised that some of those people, when given the opportunity to be heroic, are heroic. Because sometimes they don't do it because they know other people are going to do it, but it comes down to, we're all going to die if someone doesn't do this, and by God, I'll go do this.
Yeah. My opinion is pretty similar to both of yours, actually. There's all kinds of science behind the position that 70% of your behavior is hard-coded in your DNA and 30% is called adapted behavior. So natural behavior, 70%, adapted behavior, meaning product of your environment, 30%. So, I mean, we don't get to choose our parents. We don't get to choose our genetics, and not everybody has the genetics to excel in everything. So, but I do agree with Jeff. You may not identify somebody as a leader, and then they surprise the heck out of you when the shit hits the fan. So yeah, leaders,
that happens more than not.
Yeah. I also think though that our culture, American culture, is much more focused on instilling leadership in our youngins than other cultures. I'm talking real Americans. Randy's real Americans. By the way, I put a TM every time I say Randy's real Americans. I put a little trademark on there for you, Randy.
That's right.
Because give credit where credit's due. But yeah, interesting question. But good point. You might not flesh that out until the shit really does hit the fan, and then you find out, who's got the gumption and who doesn't. Couple quick things I want to mention. So these guys here, I've shown you these Commie Tube AI. This is not a real gun. It's a Mantis Titan X training gun. It's plastic. So Vets Tactical, let me get it where you can see it. Actually, I'd probably change over a different camera here. Vetstactical.com. They make these badass, it's called a capholster, and that is trademark, by the way. And so it sits in your drink holder. Jeff has seen these in action, people competing against, people competing against each other, what a difference is. So I got something really cool for you guys. On the Wednesday at SHOT Show this coming January, there is going to be a quick draw competition at the Vets Tactical booth. And as we get closer, I'll give you all the booth numbers, like this freaking long. But here's the deal. That competition is going to be, can you beat my good friend Keith Graves? So we're going to use the Mantis Titan X, and every time you pull the trigger, it shoots a laser like the Blackbeard X. There's going to be a target that's electronic that measures how many times you hit the target, and you're going to be put in a seat that simulates being in the driver's seat with the pistol sitting in the capholster. And when the Mantis app goes off, it's got a buzzer just like a regular shot timer. You're going to draw from the capholster and you're going to shoot that target. And if you beat Keith Graves, you're going to get a whole bunch of swag and other stuff from Craig at Vets Tactical. It's going to be really good. So if you want to meet Keith Graves, Christian Warrior Training, myself, plus other people will be with me from the SD team. Craig, the guy who owns Vets Tactical. This product, by the way, he owns all the equipment and makes these himself. This is 100% American-made product. Here's another thing, too. Whether you want to enter the competition or not, you can time yourself. He'll have a setup where he'll have a holster and a fake pistol that you can draw, say, from if you carry appendix, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever. And then you'll draw from the cup holster. He's got a deal being made where it's set up beside you, just like being in a truck. It's pretty cool. Jeff, what was the average speed gain for somebody using a cup holster versus drawing off their person?
It's something ridiculous, like 3 seconds.
That's what I thought. So, check it out.
Long enough to get dead.
Well, 3 seconds. Yeah.
Or not get dead.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it's a country mile, right? And these are not really expensive. Go to vetstactical.com.
I have one in my Jeep.
We don't get affiliate income from this guy, but use the code S as in Sam, D as in David 10. You get 10% off. You support a veteran, 100% made in America. Want to see as many of you as possible, by the way, at SHOT Show. We're going to be recording the whole thing. And, the winner's going to get a trophy. It's going to be, the Vets Tactical, world champion, world cup holster champion, first time ever. And like I said, it's going to be on the Wednesday at SHOT Show. That's
I guarantee Keith's practicing every day now, isn't he?
We had a con call today between Craig and Keith and I. He's like, damn it. He says, I don't want somebody to beat me in public.
I know, right?
It's not going to be that hard. Keith is old.
Oh, shots fired.
Yeah.
That you have to come to SHOT Show now. I mean, if you're going to talk like that, if you're going to, throw shit around like that. Well, it's really not fair though, because you've been practicing with the cup holster for some time now. So
not really, because it's in my garage. What am I going to do? Shoot I'm not going to be firing off a 9 in my garage.
Yeah, he probably doesn't have your handy dandy. Yeah,
you need to get yourself.
I don't have one of those.
They're only $199. They make them a bunch of different formats. I don't have a discount.
They're only $199. Buy one and send it to me. Yeah, I didn't think so.
Well, I didn't even buy one for myself, for crying out loud. This is a T&E unit, a testing evaluation unit. Are you kidding me? I don't pay for that stuff.
Well, maybe you need to tell them we need 1 or 2 more just to be certain.
I could probably arrange that. So anyway, we seriously want to see you at SHOT Show at the Vets Tactical booth. The competition is going to be badass. And by the way, if any of you are law enforcement and you don't know this, Keith Graves is the infamous chief sheriff from River City Police in California, world famous. What should we call it? It's not sarcasm. What would you call it?
It's satire.
Satire. That's the word I was looking for. And I mean, he's got patches that have the unicorn on them with the rainbow and stuff. It's, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up River City Police, California, Chief Sheriff, SHARRIS. It is indeed Keith Graves. He came out.
He's got a LinkedIn account too. You can find it on LinkedIn, maybe even Facebook. I'm not sure.
He came out of the closet, and it is. We were standing in a suite last year at the Venetian, and everybody was getting zapped with Jeff Nicholas's glove things, right? And Keith, he went down hard. So did I, but he went down hard. And somebody said something about him being chief sheriff, and the whole suite was full of law enforcement. Like, you're chief sheriff? You're River City Police? Like, I mean, because he's just been so anti-politically correct. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, besides that, I want to thank our premier sponsor, Carnival. I love working with these guys. Again, I don't get affiliate money from these guys. They help us defer some of our expenses. $4,700 a month in software subscriptions, amongst other pretty hefty expenses. But this is 100% American beef, chicken, or pork. It is grass finished, not just grass fed. No mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. This 6-ounce bag, when you reconstitute it, takes 5 to 10 minutes, makes 1.5 pounds of 100% American beef. The bags made in America, the O2 absorbers made in America. I mentioned how these guys basically have, done an incredible tribute to Tyrone Woods, killed in Benghazi. You'll hear more about that soon. It's a phenomenal thing, but these are Randy Nance's true Americans.
That's
with
right.
with the little TM after. You can see Randy even's wearing his carnival hat. If you want to help support Survival Dispatch News by buying from these guys, it helps the whole equation fit together, allows us to do what we do. Can't say enough good things about those guys either. We only work with companies like this, by the way. If it's not American owned and true to American values, real American values, that's before Randy corrects me, then we don't typically do business with people. But beyond that, if y'all head over to survivaldispatch.news, you can sign up for a free account, but the paid account is where the magic happens. You get access to 5 private signal chats. You get direct access to the whole SDN team. You get behind the scenes content. You get early access to content. You get the Survival Dispatch emergency notification alerts. But the 5 signal channels is pretty crazy. And by the way, a week from, what's today? Thursday? A week from today, Thanksgiving, we're going to announce the 6th signal channel, which is pretty interesting. But the reason we have so many signal channels is because the main channel, the Guardians channel, averages around 12,000 messages per week. It's like looking for a needle in a stack of needles if you're looking for something in particular in there. So we carve them off. We have one for survival prepping. We have one that's for John's threat wire security bulletins. We've got another one that's news only, emergency notification system plus. Like I said, we have a 6th one coming next week. It's $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year. It gets you 2.5 months for free. It's quite a deal, because let me just put this last thing out there for you. We have Guardians across the entire country. We have eyes on the ground across the entire country. When you are watching legacy media and they're feeding you a line of bullshit from their official narratives, and then maybe you go on X and you see a bunch of stuff that's contradictory to legacy media, but you're left wondering, I mean, I don't really know this person. I don't know who to trust. What's really going on? I have now seen multiple times in our private chat for our Guardian members, somebody step up and say, hey, I drove by that ICE building, on my way home from work an hour ago, and what they're telling you is happening is not what's really happening. And it's just a great way to get to the truth from a bunch of like-minded people. And here's the next part to it. Substack is my favorite platform because they don't censor us. They don't suppress us. That's where survivaldispatch.news is. CommieTube is exactly what it sounds like, et cetera, et cetera. Signal is not a platform. So it's not something you get kicked off of because you said something that, was against the official narrative. It's encrypted. It's open source. I come from the world of big tech, high tech. I've studied the source code myself. There are no backdoors. There are no vulnerabilities. And when you look up, people say, oh, there's a vulnerability in Signal. Every single time it's a phishing attempt, tricking somebody into giving up their credentials. Well, that applies to every app. And if somebody gives up their credentials for any app, yeah, of course they're going to gain access to it. But what it does, though, is it protects our community from being kicked off a platform at the end of the day.
Yep. So,
and you get the truth delivered directly to you by people that you can trust. And nobody's got a dog in that. Nobody's getting paid to tell you, what the truth actually is. Anyways, we will be back tomorrow night with another special episode. It's going to be on Venezuela and things heating up there, cartels as well, TDA gang, et cetera, et cetera. And then Monday, we're going to resume the long war series. But want to thank you all who, like, share, comment, subscribe to our stuff, especially the Guardian members. But between now and tomorrow night, God bless, and God bless America.
God bless, and God bless America. Thanks for the 20, Dano. Airborne, baby.
Right on. Enjoy the brand new closing video. Thank you all.
Ah la 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 who Akbar. Ah la 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 who Akbar. Ah la 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 who Akbar. Ah. Now that your full surrender is through, never forget it's something that you do. It's 9/11, families are still grieving, America's seething. Socialism's evil, but you don't care. Gotham is bleeding, you're still unaware. Believing a system of lies where everything is fair. Ooh. New York forever under the files world. The apple's only a memory, time to say goodbye. New York, not just a state of mind. It's everybody that's feeding you, hoping you don't die.